All right, American history students, let's start how the United States got involved in World War One. Lesson 5 of credit recovery, and away we go. So again, the big idea here is to all remember how it gets back to imperialism. Every effect that you will see in this unit has something to do with imperialism and how our role in the United States changed because of it before the end of this war. So going into today's target, we're going to see what caused the United States to enter into World War One. You're going to see there's going to be two things that I'm going to say very direct and very bluntly. So hopefully you can grasp those concepts. So where we left off in the war, World War One is now on in Europe. You're going to see different countries are going to pick different sides, and you're going to see Germany is in a pickle. They have France on one side, they have Russia on the other side. Those two sides are friends. So Germany does not want to have a two-front war. So what they do is invade Belgium to get behind the French forces, and this is known as the Schlieffen Plan. Now, the only reason why I even bring this up is because once Germany invades Belgium, that is going to bring Great Britain into World War One. Great Britain is a very close ally of ours. They're like our older brother. We were once part of them. So naturally, they get involved. We take notice. They're going to need some future help. More about that in a little bit. And you're going to notice that this is why we care, okay, because of Germany doing this. So once they get all the forces in front of them, this is where you're going to see both sides are going to turn to trench warfare. Now, this is a very defensive tactic, meaning you do not go actively pursuing anybody like what we saw with the Philippine American War, guerrilla warfare. This is more of a sit and ride it out type of thing. So there might be days they didn't even shoot a shot, but this is a very effective strategy. And both sides were doing it. So both sides were being ultra conservative. You're going to see that they're both going to be on defense because they don't want to take heavy losses. And this is going to be all over Europe, known as the Western Front. They're going to dig miles and miles of trenches. So 450 miles to be exact. So if you really want to get down to it, this is probably close to the Quad Cities to Des Moines and back worth of trenches. That's about 450 miles. Might be a little bit short of it, but still, that's a lot. So, question number one. What was the main tactic used in World War One? So here you see a picture of a trench. You can see the soldier kind of peeking his head over top. You can kind of see how deep it is. So it's kind of like a big ditch. You also see three soldiers here sleeping, maybe four, sleeping because they would get so bored and they would just kind of take it in shifts. You would only spend about a week in the front line trench before you would all be rotated back with fresh bodies, fresh attention, whatever you want to call it. And then you'd just basically swap out. But you can see the barbed wire on top of all of this, and this is what really kind of prevented people from running from one ditch to the next. You get caught in that barbed wire, that's going to slow you down. And then that's when you can also see that the machine guns, talking about here in a little bit, are going to mow you down. So this led to the war just dragging on for years. So the first couple of years of this World War One were extremely slow until these new defensive weapons, which I'm coming up here in a little bit, are going to start making things a little bit more lively. Okay, so you can see the major battle there to begin with, the Battle of Verdun, the Battle of Somme, and that's really a world history thing. But we take notice of this because of our future allies are taking heavy losses, and with heavy losses of manpower, heavy losses of materials. So when we get involved in lesson 6, you're going to notice that those two things, manpower and weapons, are going to be very welcome from the United States. But here is what the trench life would be. You're going to notice that people just more or less went crazy with health risks, mental health risks, and so on and so forth. You can see rat catching was kind of a popular game during this time. PTSD started running rapid because you never really know when this threats are going to be coming, I guess you would say. But the spaces between the two trenches, I mentioned them before with the barbed wire. This was known as no man's land. So you couldn't just run across because no man would ever be found alive, because all the weapons would cut you down pretty quickly. So if you've ever seen the movie Wonder Woman, she goes running across, and with her magic bracelets, she kind of gets across no problem. But this didn't really happen in real life, obviously. So why this all matters is because our U.S. soldiers are going to face very similar conditions when they become involved. Then these are those news weapons I was telling you about. So with the trench warfare being a thing, they're always constantly thinking, how can they counter this? So I mentioned machine guns, the barbed wire, that kind of went hand in hand. Here you also see heavy artillery guns. So up to a mile away, you could shoot a big shell or a big bullet, if you want to think of that, and take out a large spot of a trench in one massive lump. Okay. They also use poisonous gas to help flush people out of those trenches because once the gas went down inside that ditch, it kind of just sat there because there wasn't any air moving. Then you also see armored tanks coming about because you can drive from one trench to the other, drive right over that barbed wire. And with those being kind of a cover, you can kind of follow the tank along through. This is one thing the United States is going to do once we become involved. Submarines, I'm going to mention them a little bit more in here in a little bit, but kind of a fairly new technology. The Germans are going to really use the crap out of those things, and they're going to sink some boats that we're going to take notice to, again, coming up in a few slides. And then airplanes, once seen as kind of a gimmick of just being able to fly, people are going to realize they can fly over people's trenches and point out where they're at. And then eventually they're going to say, hey, we can drop bombs from here, or hey, we should attach guns to this and we can shoot down other people's planes. So those are going to be some of the new weapons. There's obviously a lot more, but those are the ones that kind of are notable today, except for poisonous gas. It's now illegal to use poisonous gas in times of war. But here's question number 2. Which were the effects of trench warfare? So then finally, let's get into how the United States got involved. When it first started, we wanted to stay completely out of World War I. We just straight up did not care. But the people of the United States, they did care because you got to keep in mind, we're a country of immigrants. A lot of people's older brothers, siblings, uncles, maybe some fathers, whichever, are actively fighting in Europe, either for the good guys or the bad guys. Okay, so what we wanted to do as a government is stay completely out. However, I told you before we had natural allies in the French and Great Britain just because of our history with them. So we would help them out. We'd give them supplies. So we'd give them military things, I guess you would say. So this is actually what's going to lead to one of the reasons why we actively got involved. But again, when World War I started, we were not involved. And this is actually how Woodrow Wilson's going to win a second term. He's going to keep us out of war. But right after he won in 1916, he's going to start slowly building up our army, slowly building up our navy, basically knowing that we're going to have to get involved before too long. But as I mentioned, we were helping out Great Britain, we were helping out France by giving them some wartime supplies, and we were transporting them to England, in Europe, however you want to phrase it, on cruise liners. So imagine like the Royal Caribbean cruise lines or the Disney cruises of today. We were loading the bottoms of those up with military supplies. The Germans caught wind of that. So they started sinking cruise liners. And then this is one cruise liner in particular that caught our attention, the Lusitania. So not only did this have American wartime supplies in it, but it also had Americans on it. It had 125 Americans. So we are going to be super angry about this. So we are going to basically tell Germany to stop doing it. And they agreed, but then they broke that promise a little bit later. They sunk a French ship. But why we care about this is that they opened up unrestricted submarine warfare. You do not just go around sinking innocent boats without reason. So therefore, they are going to sink all of this stuff to the bottom of the ocean so the wartime materials, the supplies go with it. So they're going to do this a few more times and we're going to get super angry. But this Lusitania was a very, very big thing because it led to this question. Germany sinking cruise liners with their U-boats would be an example of which part of mania? So here's the last straw, I guess you would call it. So this is really why we declared war. So Germany is actually going to reach out to one of our neighbors, Mexico. And they're going to send this thing called the Zimmerman Note. So this is Arthur Zimmerman, the gentleman at the top, and he's going to send a telegram to Mexico proposing, Mexico, we want to be allies with you. We want to use your land to invade the southern part of the United States. We also want you to know that you're going to be compensated. We're going to give you a large portion of the United States, which was once upon a time parts of Mexico, back for your help. So we get this telegram from Great Britain, who somehow intercepts it. We instantly want to declare war on Germany. Okay, so it went through the Congress, it all gets voted on, and it actually passes fairly easily. You can see 450 minus 49, so 401 votes to 49 saying we should declare war. And I have this story of Jeanette Rankin, which is kind of important because she voted only no on World War One, but she also voted no on World War Two after Japan bombed us at Pearl Harbor. So more about her when we get to actually World War Two. So here's question number 3. Germany writing a letter to Mexico, ultimately bringing the United States into World War One, would be which part of Mania? So stop and really think about this one.